So in this next few minutes, I'm going to go by one of Disney's principles. And one of Disney's principles is to delight your customers. And I always find it delightful when a meeting ends a little bit early. We put in a lot of intense work today, and for that I am so thankful for the discussion and for the input and the collaboration and the open sharing of ideas and thoughts and experiences. So what I want to do is touch on the top 3 topics that we heard, see if there's anything else that we should think about. So for example, this identify spectrum of engagement when they talk about the top 4, because those are the ones that really stood out from the rest. And to Mashid's point, what are the heavy lifts? What are some ideas about what would be really helpful in terms of what that looks like? Is it a tool? Is it, we should do an engagement award on this topic, for example. The mentorship one already came up from researcher to researcher. So we'll just do some quick brainstorming, wrap it up in about 15, 20 minutes or when conversation falls flat. And then I'm going to do just some final thoughts, and we will call it a second day, if that sounds good. So number 1 was provide mentorship support, yeah? So we saw it on both models of engagement. In fact, I would argue that this was a theme that kind of came through from when Nancy started talking about how mentorship was really critical. And then mentorship for models of engagement, expanding diversity, provide mentorship. And it's come about as both researcher to researcher, researcher to patient, patient to patient. So it sounds like a program of principles. Anybody want to call out why they specifically put their dot or 3 dots there? Something that they think we should really think about as we pull this together. This is I'm talking about provide mentorship support. So Janice?
Personally, I'll talk for Michelle and I, that when we came on the science team, it was new language, and we're sitting at the table with doctors, medical anthropologists, PhDs, clinicians, all these people were all like, whoa, and we were just mostly listening, but we also realized when we started asking questions, they wanted us to, but we were taking up too much time. So we knew that's when we implemented the half hour before the meetings with the program manager, and it was totally, it was so much needed and very beneficial to both the team and us, where we could stay abreast and be able to give a little bit more articulate input during the meeting. Do you want? No. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Sandra? Look at that discipline at the end of the day.
I think it's important that we all have a more wide world view of what we're doing all the time, because, we can work and work and work in our little spot, but if it doesn't get passed on, we've wasted a lot of time and energy and resources that could help others in the same place, like in the same area of your city or wherever you are. And, as a group through the internet or whatever, I think it's important to think of that, helping others instead of just doing your own little thing.
So I'm hearing a lot about the value of mentorship and how you might connect with people outside of your realm to think creatively about new topics. Okay, so that's really helpful. So the second, any other thoughts before I move on to the next topic, things that you want us to capture with regards to mentorship? Okay, so my next number is over here at 11, online training toolkit. So that is a very big topic. That could encompass a lot of the things that we heard. I think one of the things that I'm going to tease apart in some of our next action steps, so I'd love people's feedback on this, is figuring out what toolkits already exist. We heard Daniel talking about the tools that he has on their website, so I just need to get to that link, and he said he would happily share it. Before Nate, Tony, and Lynn left, they talked about some tools and templates that they had, so those exist. Shanini and I talked at break about tools that, and we heard Leah mention that too, that there are going to be tools that are coming about, so I feel like we need to do a little bit of cataloging still. We have in our report what tools and trainings already exist, so part of our action in the next few months and things that we've been actively talking about is how do we make that available so that people can start to figure out what's helpful, what's not helpful. So that's a big topic. If there's certain things that you want us to take away, you're on film, it'll be recorded, we will go back and make sure we hear it. What would be specifically helpful within this big realm of toolkit past what I've already said? Anybody have a great vision of what this looks like? Sandra.
I have a vision of what I don't want to see. I don't want to see just a place where everybody puts up their own stuff and it's just kind of out there and you have to work your way through thousands of different listings. That it's somehow, you know, taken care of by a host or curator or something like that.
Yeah, I think there's going to need to be more work in terms of how do we make this user-friendly? How do we kind of think about how people would access this information? So we actually have an MPH student who's going to be working with us to do some of that work. So one open ask I would make is, can we connect with you? You can always tell me no. That's what I always tell people. But to have some conversations about if we display it like this, is this helpful? Is this not helpful? Where would we move the toggle, for example? Or what information can we provide so it's quick, accessible, and gives you what you need? Karen?
I was just going to echo that perspective. I know we've talked about it on the steering committee, that just listing 10 resources for human subjects training doesn't help me if you don't just give the top 3 that are the most effective. And how we're going to rank those, I don't know, but I think that's going to be the most important part of that.
Yep, that's helpful. I think that, how do you evaluate? A tool exists, that does not mean a tool is helpful. Renee?
Could you potentially have volunteers who'd be willing to vet some of the materials after you get those and then possibly bring it to the group to rank after they've been vetted?
Yeah.
Because I think that would be really helpful to kind of go through, like, what are my top 3, 5, 10 things that I want to see, and then figure out from that what's reasonable to support.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I mean, I even from what I learned from Julie's group on the Project Trace, like now have personal experience based on that, and I can say how we used it, and I could ask Kim or Bonnie or one of our patient partners to give their perspective, because I can reflect that it didn't sound like there were any barriers, but certainly they'll have a different perspective based on maybe what I take away. So I think that's a great idea. Any other thoughts? Yep, Mary.
Danielle, I think from a patient's perspective, and it's really important, to be very careful and definitive about the topics that will go into the toolkit. I don't think we need a laundry list of everything. I think we need to refine it so that it doesn't feel overwhelming when you're looking at it. And the other thing I think is it has to be really user-friendly in terms of getting around it, because if it's too time-consuming, it's going to be awkward. It's not going to be effective use of resources.
Yeah. I think that's great. I think what we can do is we can go through the recording. Mary's on my steering committee, so we can think through this more and figure out what were the things that were tool-like and put those in our report and feed that back out to the group. And you can let us know in reviewing the report missing, and then maybe what's a priority. So when we send this out, I am going to ask just to make sure that we captured things right and that we didn't miss a topic that you didn't feel was raised or that does require further thought, and we can incorporate that in. That's a great point, Mary. All right. Anything else on online training toolkit? Okay, number 9 votes, 8-ish, 9-ish. Identify, develop a spectrum for engagement. We had some conversation right before we started to prioritize. Anything else to add past, looking at the different mechanisms or ways people have engaged and what that looks like? Brad? Wait for they're coming at you from both sides.
Well, after saying what I said earlier, the only other thing I thought of was that, it's also about where you're hosting the meeting. And so if you're really boots on the ground in the community, it should really be in the community. And so just beyond just what you're compensating, just also where you're doing it and where the venues are. So a spectrum of how you're doing that as well.
So I think there's some things that are probably worth going through, like beware of meeting locations, that give ourselves permission to shift focus. It's in that facilitation conduct of meeting, and we heard that. What are different ways to do meetings and those sorts of things? So if there's some topics that group together, we'll pull those together, because I think that there's some things that should be some just general guidance of things to do and things not to do. Anything else on the spectrum for engagement? Yeah, Julie.
I guess just that I know in the Tier 2 report, we were asked to identify our partners where they were at in the rubric that PCORI uses, but also having more specific options and ideas at each level, I think would be cool, pulled from the people that are doing the work. Does that make sense?
I think so. I think that's helpful. I'm visualizing what you're saying, so.
We have a parent or patient advisory group, but a model we heard from earlier had the colleague level and then also the group. So just different Yeah.
Yeah, got it. Perfect. Sandra.
One of the things that was brought up in our table discussion was the importance of not just the meeting location as far as, place on a map, but the venue in and of itself is important because it can be like too fancy or not fancy enough, or, it can turn off people for different reasons, and just try to find something that's kind of level and speaks to everyone.
No, fair
Let
point.
me add to that and say that is about cultural competence, right? If we are culturally competent as practitioners and we're considering location and what we know about the community will inform our choice of venue. We'll have that awareness of who they are, what they value, as well as the historical perspective of who those folks are and how that space may influence them. And that was what I was speaking to yesterday. So thanks for bringing it up again.
Janice.
I just think that we could also add in there the link to the compensation framework, which is actually on PCORI, so people really realize that there's compensation at different levels.
So that pulls up, I think compensation did make it on here somewhere.
Right beneath
Develop compensation models. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the spectrum of some of these topics too is there more than one level that we need to consider.
So compensation might fit with that spectrum piece, right?
So what is the different level of involvement? What compensation might play into this? And thinking past financial compensation, I know looking at publications or presentations, who is the right person to present with a team? Is that at a certain level of involvement or a different level of involvement? Does that fit in? But what are other things that somebody conference support, those sorts of things? How do you start to think about those frameworks? Renee.
I was just thinking back about the identify the spectrum and just really focusing on the fact that not everyone has to be engaged at every step necessarily, because we might need more individuals, especially kind of have their voices initially to identify what the concern is, and they may not have capacity. And so not ruling people out just because they don't actually have capacity to follow a project through for the entire piece, but capitalizing on what they can bring to the table at different steps and stages, I think is important.
All right, Brad. Turn around, Janice. Pass the baton.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is a direct relation, but it's just something that was interesting that I learned in my project recently. And we were trying to figure out a way to engage patients and get information from them. And we were going to try and link it to a celebration and a party for like their participation. And the feedback we got, particularly from our patient partners, was please don't combine the two. Like if you want to have a celebration, have a celebration. And if you want to have engagement, have an engagement. Don't try to hold a focus group during our celebration and such. So it's a little unlinked, but I'm starting to connect these thoughts of like the patients want us to bring our results back to the community. So when you go to bring the results back to the community, you might want to make that a celebration and like leave the engagement out of it. And then you might just want to do engagement separately. And I often, as the researcher, think, well, this is a great opportunity. You have them all in one place, And so I was hearing from the patients that those should be mutually exclusive, actually, where I want to sort of combine the efficiency there.
No, I think that's good. In the report that we did, we specifically asked questions about what was working, what wasn't working, and then there were these themes that came out, similar to the past day and a half, where there were themes about mentorship. That relationship component, be it with the community, be it with patient partners, parents, how you create that team dynamic is really important. And so I think what we will continue to pull through this is what does a good relationship or a good team look like, and that's between patients, researchers, their statisticians, the different group dynamics, and how do you set that up for success? So maybe looking for some of those bright shining examples. I know PCORI is highlighting those. How do we make sure that those make it within our community too, or we have those connections back to the community? Any other final thoughts or comments from the group before I wrap up? Okay, so I can't thank you all enough for showing up and for staying engaged and for the great ideas and discussion. A couple key things to highlight. I keep telling Sarah, who is planning her wedding in October, that this has been for her, that I'm helping her think about how to think through all of the details of such a big event. I have no doubt it's going to be an amazing event. No, I truly support, or I truly appreciate everything Sarah does on a day-to-day basis. I would be a hot mess without her. So everything that you've done to support this, to coordinate it, to make it seamless, I literally feel like I just had to show up. So I have to give her a big round of applause. Anna has recently joined our team, but she was responsible for putting the program, the materials together. She comes from a background from patient advocacy. I'm excited to include her more in the work that we're doing. If you tweet, the reason why she's been on her computer is she's been tweeting and being social media diva for the couple of days. So feel free to link to her and help disseminate the work that you guys have been part of too, or to highlight your own projects and involvement here. So my appreciation to Anna for all the hard work and behind the scenes work that she's been doing. Makeda has been fantastic, as I said, but at the very beginning, I was so excited to highlight his craft as part of this, and just to be able to work with somebody who brings such a dynamic aspect to a meeting is fantastic. Grateful that we have the support to be able to do this. So my thanks to you, and this beautiful art that I will share with the community and also hang on our walls at the office so people can be jealous of what we spent the past day and a half doing. So thank you. Thank you. To my UW video crew, I think I just had a piece of ice that I was chomping on. I apologize for that and the other challenges I may have given you over the past couple of days. You guys have been great. I know you've been quiet in the background, but thanks for recording all of this great discussion. I really appreciate it. And Alex, who's sitting on the other side of that door, I'm waving at you. Thank you very much. And last but not least, to PCORI, to Shanenye for coming. And you don't know this, but I am going to take her to another meeting from 5:30 to 7:30 to continue engage with her. So not only was she probably up at 3 o'clock in the morning, because that's 6 o'clock on the East Coast time, I don't have a bed for her to go like take a short power nap in. I'm just going to keep her going until I put her on a flight home to the East Coast. So my thanks to you for coming here in person, for sharing your wisdom, and then also for PCORI for supporting this work, and all of the great people in this room, many who are funded by your organization. So my thanks to you. Yeah.
It's definitely been a pleasure meeting you all. Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. It's been a pleasure meeting you all, chatting with you all, getting to know some of you individually and hearing about all of your great projects. I've learned so much in the day and a half that I've been here. We've got a whole sort of wealth of information that I can take back with me to DC. I'm happy to say that one of the initiatives or projects that PCORI has in the works that will soon be developed is putting together a repository for our website where we'll sort of collect and disseminate all of the different types of engagement examples, tools, resources. And I'm happy to see that a lot of the things that have been discussed over these past 2 days and the things that are posted up here are the same things that we've been discussing and bringing up at PCORI. So we're moving in the right direction, and I'm really happy to hear that. And I look forward to staying in touch with as many of you as I can, and as you continue to want to share feedback, examples, anything of that sort, you have my contact information. Feel free to contact me.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we will close. Many thanks. Safe travels if you are traveling far or if you're just traveling down the road.